Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kristen, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the 9 books I read in the month of March. So March has turned out to be my best reading month so far this year, which makes sense because March is when I had spring break, which is, when I did my spring break reading vlog. I read a whole bunch of books that week. So it makes sense that the total of March came out to 9. And honestly, it would have been like 11, but I ended up not completing 2 of the books on my TBR. And as it's the 5th of April, I'm like, okay, they're not going to count towards March anymore. I'm going to count those 2 towards April if I end up finishing those books. And I know I didn't do a February wrap up on my channel, so I definitely want to just let you guys know what books I read in February and give my star rating. But I won't be going too much into the thoughts of my February books just because I already have 9 books to talk about. It's a lot of books. So with the help of my A Clockwork Reader reading journal, let's get right into these books that I've read over the past couple of months. So I read a total of 4 books in the month of February. Definitely not my best, but February was like the month of hell for me because I just had everything going on in that month. So I only was able to read 4 books. But the first book that I read in the month of February was A Lot Like Adios by Alexis Daria, which was the second book in the Primas of Power series. The first book being You Had Me at Hola. And I believe I gave You Had Me at Hola 3 stars, and I gave A Lot Like Adios 4 stars. So I enjoyed the second book in this series a lot more than I did the first book. In You Had Me at Hola, we followed the love story of Jasmine and Ashton. And then in A Lot Like Adios, we followed the love story of Jasmine's cousin, Michelle, and then her romance with Gabriel. And so Michelle and Gabriel's story was more so a childhood friends to lovers type of story, which probably added into my overall more like of the story over You Had Me at Hola, which was I don't know what trope to call it, but it was something like she didn't know Ashton prior to meeting him. It was just like, a regular romance. You meet and they fall in love type thing. Co-workers to lovers is what that was. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars, truly enjoyed it. I liked the audiobook as well, which is how I read it, was through audiobook. So I would recommend the audiobook for it. And I'm excited to see what book comes next in the series. The second book that I read in February was 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. And I gave this 3 stars. This was a reread for me. And off of my first read, I gave this 5 stars. I don't know why. Younger Kristen just was going with vibes, I guess. I don't know. But this round, I gave it 3 stars. It definitely wasn't giving for me in terms of the vibes anymore. Of course, the story message is still powerful. And yes, I've watched most of the show. So, one of those book to TV show adaptations. But yeah, the reason I read it again was because, as you guys know, I tutor. And for one of the group of students that I tutor, I'm kind of technically like their teacher. So I teach them English, math, and science. And for English, of course, we're reading books. And so I allowed them to pick a more like modern day book and then a classic. So the more modern day book they wanted to choose, which, still had a message and something you can learn from, was 13 Reasons Why. And currently we're reading The Great Gatsby. We're going to finish it up this week as their classic pick. But yeah, that's the reason why I reread this book. The only reason why I reread this book. I probably won't read it again, but yeah, I'm kind of, it was kind of interesting to do a reread of a book that I read when I was younger, to see that my reading tastes have changed and to see that what I like in books has changed. So that's the second book I read in the month of February. The third book I read in February was Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, which I gave 3 stars. And I listened to this one as well on audiobook. This was a book that I was interested in for a long time, ever since it was published, and it went through its hype phase in the book community. And so I was interested in the story, and I finally got my hands on a library copy that I ended up listening to through audiobook. And I don't know, it just wasn't what I was expecting, I guess. It was very slow. Our main character has been receiving cryptic messages from her cousin, who has been married off and is living in like this gothic house. Yeah, I was super ready for like the horror gothic type vibes that I assumed this book was going to bring. And it did, but it wasn't enough to grab my attention, I would say. I kind of lost interest in the whole mystery purpose of the book until, of course, the very end when everything was revealed. And that was, kind of interesting what was actually going on with the house and the situation, the storyline. But I don't know, for me, it just did not grab my attention in the way that I thought it would. And, this is what happens when you read like super hype books. You have high expectations, and then a lot of times these different hype books like fall short. And in the case of Mexican Gothic, it fell short for me. And then the fourth and final book that I read in the month of February was my reread of Crescent City #1, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, which I gave it a 4.5 stars. And when I first read it back in 2020, I also gave it a 4.5 stars. So my rating for this book has not changed. I still love the heck out of this book. And I'm still excited to read the sequel, House of Sky and Breath. Still haven't read it. Hoping to get to it this month in April, but we'll see because we know they're chunky. Lots of annotations going on here. And it was just really fun to go through my annotations again. And these are all like different notes I had wrote in my first read of the book. So going through all my notes again and adding annotations and underlining new things now that I know what happens in the book. I was able to find new things to underline and annotate that I know adds into the big reveal and everything going on by the end of the book. So I had a great time reading this book. I don't really do too many rereads because I read pretty slow, and there's just so many books that I haven't read, so many books that I want to get to, so many books, of course, that you hear about on the daily and add to your TBR. So it's like reread a book or read a new book. But of course, I had to reread this one to be well prepared for House of Sky and Breath. And yeah, I had a great time. So definitely expect some more rereads from me like this year and into my future. All right, so let's hop into these 9 books that I read in March. The first of these I read as an audiobook, and that is All the Things We Never Knew by Liara Tamani, and I gave that a 4 out of 5 stars. So honestly, I am shocked by my star rating of this book. So I saw somebody post this book on Bookstagram on their story. I don't remember who did, but in their story, the caption was like Love and Basketball vibes. And I was like, period, I have to have it because yes, Love and Basketball is a great movie. It's a classic. I love the movie Love and Basketball. I love the sport of basketball itself, and I love romance. Therefore, I needed to get the book ASAP. And of course, I'm always looking for audiobooks to listen to. So checked it out from Libby and went into it with no vibes, like no knowledge of what this book is about. Come to find out that this book is really about 2 high schoolers, Carly and Rex, who are on their respective basketball teams, and they're like super good at basketball at their schools, on track to go do NBA, WNBA type stuff. Carly ends up going to one of Rex's basketball games, and like their eyes meet, and all of a sudden it's like love at first sight. And so I was like, oh no, not a love at first sight type of story. Like that's not the type of romance books that I enjoy. So how did I give this book 4 stars? It's because this story is more than just the romance between Carly and Rex. The book is in a dual perspective. So we're getting both Carly's thoughts, we're getting Rex's thoughts, which is great, right? We need to see both sides of the story because there's secrets involved, there's betrayals involved, and it's definitely a coming of age story as well. So Carly and Rex, this is their first love. And alongside, they're also having their own individual issues, their own individual family issues that they have to deal with as well in their respective chapters. And so there was definitely more depth to this book than I was expecting from the first couple of chapters of the book, when I thought it was just going to be some weird type of love at first sight story. Because when I tell you, like, they locked eyes and then Rex was going hard for Carly on the bus talking about that's my girl, you have never had a conversation with her. So I was sitting here like, what is going on? But then we got deeper, and I love me a good deep story where people have their issues and they figure them out by the end of the story, obviously. So that's what this book gave. Therefore, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, so the next audiobook listen for me was No Exit by Taylor Adams, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was pretty good. I literally had no idea what No Exit was, but then again, influenced by social media and y'all in this book community, because I was seeing a lot of people talk about No Exit for whatever reason. I think because there's a movie. I don't know if the movie is new or if people are just watching the movie now. Let me look, because I'm actually very interested. I need to watch the movie if that's the case. Okay, so yes, this makes sense. This movie was released on February 25th of this year, 2022. So it makes sense that everybody was talking about it. But basically, in No Exit, we are following our main character, Darby, who is coming home for Christmas to visit her family. She just found out that her mom had pancreatic cancer and was going into surgery. So she wanted to, be there for her family during that time. She's not super close with her family, so that's why she's like just finding out her mom has cancer. But while she's traveling to her family, she gets stuck in a really bad blizzard. Like her windshield wipers are broken, they're not working, and so she needs to get off the road. And the first thing she sees is this rest stop on the side of the road, so she goes there. And so she notices some cars parked outside, goes inside the actual rest stop and sees 4 people in there. And also when she gets there, there's no service for her phone, so she can't like let her family know that she is going to be delayed in arriving because the blizzard. So yada yada. So when she's outside trying to get some phone service, she stumbles upon this van. One of the cars is parked out, peeks inside and notices that a girl is in there in a cage. So of course Darby she really has just inserted herself into this big situation, and she just cannot let this little girl be kidnapped with her knowledge. So the whole book is her trying to figure out who's a child, which one of the 4 strangers is in on this kidnapping event, and how to get herself and the little girl out safely with no cell phone service. I thought it was done pretty well. I think my only thing I would say about the book is that it was really long. It kind of dragged. Like everything that could happen to Darby happened to her. Like everything that could go wrong with the situation, once we figure out who's in on it, once we figure out what's going on, then everything just happens. Because we figure out who's in on this kidnapping situation pretty early on in the book. So it's not like the big reveal at the end of the book is who the kidnapper is. The big kind of plot is her escaping the situation once we figure out who's in on the kidnapping. And now that I'm thinking about what actually happened at the end, like I really did not guess that. So I really appreciate, of course, books that leave you surprised and shocked, because Darby goes through a whole bunch. And of course, it's not the most realistic story ever. I've heard kind of mixed reviews on the movie that it wasn't good. So I'm interested now to see what my thoughts are going to be on this movie. Probably won't be good, honestly. I think the last thriller adaptation I watched was There's Someone Inside Your House on Netflix, and that movie adaptation was trash. Like I was legit upset. I watched the adaptation with my boyfriend. Of course, he had not read the book, but I was telling him like, all the things that should have been happening in this movie. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Who are these people? Why are these events happening? And the book was good enough for There's Someone Inside Your House for it to be, pretty much the same. I don't know why they did all that change. Anyway, so that's kind of like not having high expectations for No Exit. I'm done having high expectations. I'm not gonna have high expectations for the No Exit movie, but I'm definitely going to watch it sometime soon. I'll let you guys know what I think about it. All right, so after No Exit, I decided to switch it up. Let's get something different in here. And decided to read a nonfiction, a memoir, if you will. And that is You Got Anything Stronger by Gabrielle Union, which is the like companion novel, sequel, whatever you call this, to We're Gonna Need More Wine that she released a couple of years ago. I read it and I really enjoyed it. So when I found out that Gabrielle Union was doing another book about her life, I knew that at some point I had to give it a listen. She narrates the audiobooks herself. So if you enjoy listening to Gabrielle Union talk, then you will enjoy listening to her books, similar to Michelle Obama reading her own books. We love it here. So whereas in We're Gonna Need More Wine, we're kind of following Gabrielle Union's childhood, her upbringing, to her rising career, meeting Dwayne Wade and all her other relationship stories going on there. That was that book. So this one, You Got Anything Stronger, we start off with Kavia James' birth story. And if you know anything about Gabrielle Union, you know that she has had many miscarriages. But then she finally has her child, Kavia James. And I love me some Kavia James. She is a mood. She is a vibe. Just has all the faces, all the expressions. It made me so happy to hear about the birth story of Kavia James and just the journey, of course, that Gabrielle Union had to go through. It was not easy at all. And then we get to more stories about her acting career, of course, but this time it's more so reflections of her journey. One of these reflections that we're getting is a letter to her very famous Bring It On character, Isis. This time we're getting a reflection on the character of Isis, and in what ways Gabrielle Union wished she had done that character differently. I would definitely recommend this book. I mean, I did give it 5 stars. I love Gabrielle Union. I love her storytelling skills. There's just so many more stories in there besides the birth story and the reflections on acting. I really loved it, and y'all should definitely check out the audiobooks of both of her books. Okay, so the next book I finished was a graphic novel, and I read this over spring break. It was 1 Year at Ellesmere by Faith Erin Hicks, and I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. I had all the intention of reading a bunch of graphic novels over my spring break, so I went to the library and I checked out a bunch of the graphic novels that I thought sounded interesting, you know, because I know pretty much nothing about graphic novels besides Heartstopper and Check Please, only ones I've read. So I was just browsing because I do want to get more into graphic novels, and the best way to do that is to just pick some up at the library. You know, it's free, available whenever you need them. So I picked this book up. I also started reading Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell, which is also illustrated by Faith Erin Hicks, which is hence why I picked this book up too, because same illustrator author type deal. But I haven't finished this one yet. I'm reading this to my boyfriend and he's slacking. He's just letting me down. So we haven't finished this book yet, or else I could have given a review in this video. So blame him. I gave this a 3 stars. Like I said, this is a middle grade story where we are following Juniper, who is 13 years old. She's a scholarship student who was sent to this boarding school here, and it's of course full of rich people. But Juniper being sent to boarding school, she thought it was going to be like the best thing ever, but when she gets there, it's definitely the opposite, because she's seen as like the special project. Everybody knows she's a scholarship kid, which is not really helping anybody's self-esteem. And so the queen bee of this boarding school is out to get Juniper, and then there's a fantastical element of a mythical beast that roams the school. So first and foremost, of course, a 5 stars for this art style. I loved everything about it. Faith Erin Hicks is a really talented artist, but the story itself just fell kind of flat for me, you know? There wasn't really much going on in the plot besides the competition between Juniper and the mean girl at the school. But the one thing that I did like, well, there were 2 things I liked about this book. The first was that even though Juniper is like the scholarship kid and everybody knows that, she honestly does not let that define her. She's still killing it at the school with her grades, and she's standing up for herself against this bully, the queen bee at the school. She's not taking any mess from this mean girl. And then I did like the relationship between these 2 characters here. This one's Juniper, and this is her roommate that she is assigned to, Cassie, I believe her name is. Cassie is kind of like very insecure about pretty much everything in her life, and Juniper helps her to gain some self-confidence and self-esteem. So I really enjoyed their friendship as well. And I think the whole mythical beast that is said to roam the school was not needed in the book. It came up 1 time. No, it came up 2 times. I get why it was there because it came back in the end, but the story would have been just fine without this beast as well. So yeah, if you guys have any graphic novel recommendations that are like super deep and that I'll probably give like 5 stars to, you know, of course having a great art style, but also the plot has some meat to it and not just like a fluffy romance, wholesome vibes. Like I'm down to read some of those intense graphic novels that are gonna tug at my like heartstrings type thing. So let me know if you got any of those recommendations. So the next book that I listened to was The Chosen One by Echo Brown. This is the same author who wrote Black Girl Unlimited, which I gave 5 stars to for Black Girl Unlimited, but for Chosen One, I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. So The Chosen One, along with Black Girl Unlimited, these are both told from Echo's point of view. Like this is Echo's real life that she is telling in these stories, but she adds a magical realism component into her novels to give it that kind of fiction vibe to the story, even though this is actually Echo Brown's life. I really enjoyed how it was done in Black Girl Unlimited. I gave it a 5 stars, of course. It pulled out all my heartstrings because in that one, the magical realism aspect was that Echo was pretending that she was a witch during her traumatic times of her childhood. So I really liked how that was done. In The Chosen One, we are following Echo as she's entering college, a first-generation freshman at Dartmouth College. And this is one of those many examples of a very intelligent and capable Black student attending a dominantly white institution for higher education, falling behind either and leading to just destruction, whether that is dropping out, whether that's having to stay extra semester, extra year to catch up in classes, not receiving enough help and support from teachers and peers, X, Y, and Z, all things that your girl had to go through at her 4 years at UC Berkeley, which is dominantly white. Echo Brown is still using magical realism. In this case, they're called watchers, you know, different things that are kind of watching her. Yes, she's facing new struggles, struggling in college despite being valedictorian and whatnot in high school. But also Echo Brown is reflecting on her childhood still and still trying to come to terms with the things that have happened to her in her life. All this to say, I enjoyed the book. Again, Echo Brown is a very powerful writer. Of course, she has a powerful story, and I appreciate her vulnerability in sharing her story with the world in such a way. But in this case, the magical realism did not work for me. I would have rather preferred the magical realism to not be there and for her to just give a straight up account of events that happened to her in college, and still, of course, providing us with the insight on how she reflected on her childhood and her upbringing and past events, but without the whole like watchers thing. Like it was a bit different for me. But again, the different messages and the gems and the lessons learned from Echo in her first year of college just really resonated with me. And I'm just happy that this story is out there. I am still looking forward to more Echo Brown stories in this world. I'm hoping that she continues to give us little sneak peeks into her real life. That's definitely something unique that we're given from an author. But yeah, I would definitely recommend to check out Echo Brown as an author. All right, so we talked about a lot of books in this video. My 4 books that I read in February and the 9 books that I read in March. Whopping total of 13 books discussed, plus a couple of extras. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a great time talking about these books, reliving the different books that I loved throughout these past couple months and the books that I didn't love as much. But definitely remember to leave me down some suggestions for graphic novels that are going to make me sad and interested and wanting to flip to the next page, I guess is what I want. But yeah, that's all I have. I'm excited for the books that I'm going to be reading this month in April. So if you haven't watched my April TBR video, make sure that you give that a watch. I'll leave it linked in the cards as well as linked down below for you guys to check out after this video. And I'm excited for the different videos that I am planning on uploading this month in April as well. I'm trying to be a bit more consistent on YouTube. As you see, your girl is out here filming on a Tuesday. So we know that she is serious about something. So I'm hoping that this little streak that I have going lasts a long time so I can get way more content out to you guys that I want to. But other than that, that's all I have for you guys today. If you like this video, please give it a big like, comment down below, subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and make sure your notification bell is turned on so you don't miss any new uploads from me. If you made it to the end of this video, comment down below some blue hearts because I'm wearing blue, so why not? But other than that, I wish you guys the best reading month ever, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!